Thank you so much. So what I'm doing is on the left-hand side is going to be what students would normally see, and this would be an asynchronous lesson. Peardeck will always ask me at the very beginning, do you want to do it asynchronously or synchronously? Do you want kids to be on student pace mode, or do you want to deliver instruction like you normally would in a classroom? So that's what the left-hand side of the screen is. On the right-hand side, that is the teacher component to it. And I want to show you both sides so that you get a feeling of what the teacher sees and what the students would see, so that you have that split screen. So left is students and right is the teacher view. And we are going to get started. So if I could have you just take a moment to go into joinpd.com and then enter those 5 letters, and you can just use another tab to do that, and then I'll navigate you back and forth between where you need to be, whether it's in Zoom or whether it's on the actual Peardeck slideshow. So I'll give you just a moment to go to joinpd.com, and you're going to type in those 5 letters, JQIJC, and it always gives you some acronym at the very bottom. Juicy quizzes, inspect juicy carrots is today's. And as you can see on the student side, I'm seeing the numbers rise as we go through. So I can see that I have 8 students. And it keeps going up as I start class. Great. So I'm going to get started. And if you're running in late, as many students do, I'll show you a little trick that is super helpful. So once I hit that start the class, it'll automatically, and you should be seeing this on your screen on the left-hand side, that is the presentation. And if you click on my slideshow, it'll make you a copy of my presentation so that you have it forever and you can do with whatever you want to do with it. There's a lot of things in there that I probably won't get to as far as templates are included. So if you want to make yourself a copy, you're more than welcome to. It's also going to be in the agenda for the entire day. So the resources are there for you. Now, if you have a kid that comes in late, as we always do, the student would see this code up in the right-hand corner, and it's really easy to just click back onto it and then put the code back in. And so if a student comes in, they can look for that code right up in the upper right-hand corner. They don't have to wait to get started or have you direct them to get started. They get pretty used to it as students as they go through. All right, so on the left-hand side, that's what the students would see. On the right-hand side, that's what I'm seeing as an instructor. So I'm gonna get started by introducing myself. My name is Erin Asamoto. I go by she, her, and hers, and I'm the CS coach for Santa Cruz City Schools. I was a part of Merit and CIO last year and just had a wonderful time learning 1,000 more tools that I needed to be the educator that I wanted to be. And so you can reach out to me on Twitter. It's just at Erin Asamoto, or my email, which I believe is all linked into the agenda as well. So let's get going. I want to do a stress check, which means that you should be on your Peardeck tab. So if you're on Zoom, if you can navigate back to the Peardeck tab, I want to see if you are, one, I know that I have enough tools that will prepare me for next year. You're at a 0, or I'm a little worried about another year of distance learning. I'm not back to normal, or at an 8 to 10, I'm freaking out. I need more tools to help me get through this upcoming year. And if you could just navigate to where your red line would be, I would appreciate it. Great. So on the right-hand side, if you navigate back to Zoom, you'll see that this stress check is coming up live on my end. And so I can see as a teacher in real time what students are putting in there. But I can also show those responses to all of you as well on your computer screen. And so can somebody be a normal kid that likes to toggle back and forth that red line because they're just crazy, as we know students can be? Oh yeah, so those lines are moving, and I don't really want that as a teacher. I want to make sure that I can lock it in. And so if I lock, as I try to, lock it down, one of the features in this is in the settings, if you're in Zoom, you can see that there's a lock screen button, and that lock screen button allows me to just kind of lock things down, put it in place so I can give them a couple seconds to make a choice and then lock it in so that they can't move to the next thing. And I always like to start by talking about the why in the room. Why do we do this as educators? Why should we use these tools? And so I want you to choose an option here about what a 21st century classroom should be like, in your opinion. And you can choose from anywhere from A to G. So I'll give you just a moment to make that choice.
Hey, Erin.
Yeah.
Could you, I'm in the link to your slideshow, but how do I make the choice as a participant?
So if you're in the link to my slideshow, go to the joinpd.com. tab, if you've opened up a tab, Sarah, to joinpd.com, and then you typed in the code JQIJC.
Yes.
And then you should be seeing the slide that's on the left,
Oh,
which is...
I see. Yep, I'm on the wrong tab. Thank you.
No problem. I know when you make a copy, it gets a little confusing.
I got it. Thank you.
Perfect. So I see a lot of you are picking G, which is all of the above, which is why we're here in the first place, right? We want a 21st century classroom that is active, authentic, collaborative, constructive, flexible, goal-directed. And so that is the key source. But my big message to you is tools don't change the learning spaces. Peardeck is amazing. I used it all the time as an educator, and I still continue to use it to this day. But teachers are the real reason that tools work in the classroom. And so just throwing out a tool at your students isn't going to change the way that you teach. It's really how meaningful you are in that tool and why you're using that tool that really is going to impact student learning. And that's why we're all here. So it is really important to kind of think about how that is rolling over as you learn a ton of new tools today, as this is your first session. So the reason I am looking at the difference between Nearpod and Peardeck is because they do a lot of the same things. These are the free features for both of Nearpod and Peardeck. And then all of the middle features are all the same things that they both do. And so there's just a myriad of similarities in both Peardeck and Nearpod. And the reason I go with Peardeck on a continual basis is because it's dollars and cents. And as educators, we don't have a ton of money. And I looked at both of these and saw that the platinum version, which is their premium version, they have a silver and gold, which they consider somewhat premium. They're not. They don't come with a lot of the features. But if you look at that price tag, the platinum version is $349 for my one membership as an educator. And I could ask parents to donate, but in this time, especially where I have a ton of parents losing their jobs because of the pandemic, I don't feel like that's something I can do. And so when I look at Peardeck's pricing, the individual premium is $150 a year. And again, the features are almost back-to-back similar. And so with Peardeck, I feel like it's a better bang for my buck. and it comes down to dollars and cents for me as an educator. Because they do such similar things, it's really about how much are you going to make me pay for it if the district isn't going to provide it. And there aren't a ton of districts around this area that are going to. So that is why this is a Peardeck presentation versus a Nearpod. So I want to get a little note. If you're back in your joinpd.com tab, I want to know what is your experience with Peardeck, and you have 4 different choices there. So if you could make a choice on what you are, how much you've experienced in Peardeck. Fantastic. So I see that there's not a whole lot of people that are already using it, which is great. And there's a few of you who have seen Peardeck being used maybe in another colleague's classroom or in another presentation. There are a lot of you that are so good with technology, and that's why you're here today on your Friday before school starts, perhaps. And then there are some of that you're like, I have no idea what Peardeck is. Please tell me, and I will, because I want to make you a Peardeck lover just like I am. So what do you think is the biggest barrier in engagement in the classroom? And you have a couple more multiple choice questions. I'll give you just a second to choose one of those letters.
Is this from us or for
yeah, as an educator, like with students, why aren't students engaging in the classroom?
This is the one time you don't have an all of the above.
I know. So I love that I don't in this case, because I think that all of these really relate to each other, but in different ways. And so I think fear of being wrong is definitely something that I've seen my own child deal with in front of their classmates. One thing that Peardeck does, it's all anonymous. And so I'm not going to be afraid to share my answer on Peardeck, because when they project, when the teacher projects, nobody knows it was me that said that. Shyness definitely comes into place with the pandemic. Distracting home stress is a real thing. The processing, how long does it take each kid to kind of finish a task, is always going to be different. And then there are many other things that kind of come into play that we can't ever see coming. So then what kind of activities do you do in class? And I want you to circle one, more, or all of them, however you think. Fantastic. Okay. So if you could toggle back to the Zoom link so that you can see the 2 sides, I want to show you what I'm going to do right now. You have done a multiple choice. You have done a draggable side. In this case, you are drawing on the slide itself, and you'll be surprised at how well students can draw on these things. But I want to show you some of the features that come with the teacher side. So I'm going to look at the right-hand side of my screen, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, but Moran, I'm going to star yours. You said that you do a lot of group work in your class, and so I'm going to star that answer. And then I'm going to look at Sarah's, and Sarah, you haven't answered this question. I'm totally calling you out. So I'm going to say, please finish. And I'm going to send you some feedback. So right now, I've just sent Sarah immediate feedback, and the circle is going to be gray, because that means I've sent feedback to that student, where the other circles are not highlighted in the middle. I can also ask students, to hide their responses. So if somebody drew something inappropriate, which can happen, I can also hide that student's response. But I'm going to star Sarah's, and I have Moran's up here. And what I'm going to do on the left-hand side is I'm going to show the responses. And right now, you're just going to see those two. So if I want to show an exemplar in my classroom, I can use that to only highlight a few of them to kind of move the discussion along, or I can use a non-example that might help kids redirect their attention to what the task actually is. And so this is a really good way to keep participation as well. At the end of the session, I can go back to all of the stars for each of them because it's going to save all that data for me as a teacher. And I can just mark off on my attendance sheet, who did I star that day, whether it was a non-example or an example, an exemplar. And so those are kind of really fun ways to highlight some of the kids' work as you go through.
Hi, Erin. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you. This is amazing. And I'm wondering how much flexibility we have with creating what we have the kids do. Like, could I upload a very intricate paragraph? What's the, okay, thank you.
You can do just about anything. And I'll show you a ton of different templates that are already provided. And then a few that I've tweaked a little bit or a lot of it to make it my own, so that you can see the difference between pre-made templates that are a plethora of them versus the templates that you're going to create on your own and your own content. So the big thing with Peardeck is that no matter what type of student you are, every student is going to be interactive and participate in your lesson. And I think for asynchronous lessons, this is so important because we want kids to be in the class, we want them to still collaborate, and Peardeck allows me to do that whether I'm in the classroom or I'm assigning this where kids are at home. And so if you're in the distance learning right now, this happens to be one of the best features, in my opinion, to help that interactiveness and that collaboration that we want in those 21st century classrooms. And I also know as a teacher who needs more guidance, and that is huge for me. I am a database person, and I feel like database instruction makes me a better educator as a whole. And so when I know who needs more guidance, I can easily have a one-on-one conversation with that or a small group instruction. And the beauty if you're using Zoom is those breakout rooms are fantastic for those small group instructions where I can have a couple slides already pre-made for those that are getting it. And I can take a moment in a different room, in a breakout room, to have that conversation with kids who might need to get caught up. And so giving that data is, being given that data is huge for me. So let's see some examples because you asked for it, Andrea, and I want to make sure that you see as many as you possibly can. So Peardeck's broken down into 3 different ways. It is the beginning of the lesson, the do now, the bell ringers, whatever you'd like to call them. And then it is what I call the meat of the lesson. It is all of the critical thinking and the really heart of the lesson in the middle. And then we have the exit tickets, which is at the end of the class, where we really get to see students' metacognition about what did they learn and how did they feel about what they learned that day. And so we're going to start with a few templates at just the beginning of the lesson. If you're doing a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous lesson, with students as we move into the school year for distance learning, these are great ways to start off your class and take attendance while students are doing a task as you do it. And so there's a few that I love, which is draw or type 2 things that you already know about today's topic. So maybe I would list the topic on this and edit it a little bit. But I'm just asking kids to use their own modality, whether it is drawing or whether it is typing. They can do either on any drawing slide. So it allows them the choice of what they want to do. And I'm going to ask, because I see somebody on it, if you can move back to the Zoom call if you're all away from it, because you'll be able to see both sides of these templates as we move forward. So I edited this. This is what I'm talking about. I did a ton of quick writes in my class on a daily basis. I taught high school English for 14 years before this. And so I was using To Kill a Mockingbird, and I just asked, do you agree with Atticus's advice to scout? Why or why not? And provide examples from your own life to support your answer. And so this was my question for the day. And Jason gave me this wonderful answer, and he backed it up with textual evidence. However, Jason didn't answer the second part of my question, which is where I would insert that feedback. Jason, you did a great job, but how does this relate to your own life? And so that's the question that I was asking at the end that really didn't happen because sometimes we ask multiple questions as educators and they just ask that they answer the first part of it. So this was a way to kind of modify what my into part of my lesson was for these students. I can also ask, what do you want to know about today's topic? Piquing curiosity in students and having them think and contemplate, like they might not know anything about the topic today, but they might want to know something, and it might be something we're going to cover and it may not be, but having that curiosity sparked at the very beginning of the lesson is super important for me.
Erin, could you go back a slide, please?
Yep.
Back into one more.
Yeah.
So previously there was a button for you to get feedback on it. What,
Yes.
Is there no button for this sort of feedback?
So yes, I would have given feedback to this. This was actually 2 years ago, and the feedback came last year. And
Okay.
so I gave verbal feedback because we were in the classroom with Jason, but a good question. Yeah, that feedback button should be right in between the star and those 3 dots. And again, by starring only a few of the answers, we can have a rich discussion. I want to showcase what students are putting in there. And so I can highlight a few of them and have a richer class discussion because of it, and we can move forward. And I'm not going through the entire class and explaining each and everything that each student said. Again, here's another quick write. So I'm just modifying it. I like to add my Bitmoji. When I taught 12th grade, my 12th graders actually asked me on a daily basis to put it in there. And so I would ask a quick write in the same way, using a Peardeck slide. This is a text response. And so they would just be able to type in their answer versus drawing it and typing it. And then I get a ton of answers. And in this case, I was looking for students to tell me, what do they know about Frankenstein before we started reading it? And I always get those answers. Oh, it's the guy with the bolts in his neck. And I was looking to see if anybody would get who he really was. And I did. And so I knew that that student Angel had a ton of information about who Frankenstein was because he could name that fact that he was the doctor and not the monster. And so now we get into the heart of the lesson. This is the meat. And these are assessments, charts, more. I believe Peardeck is the most amazing formative assessment. And now as we go into distance learning, when we're giving summative assessments, kids can look up really anything on the internet. So we have to be very cautious of what are we asking them to do as a performance at the end of our lessons. But it's the formative assessments as we go through our lessons that really tell me, is the kid getting it or not? And so there's a ton of ways to really check for understanding throughout Peardeck by just popping in a few of these. So one of the great things is that there are tons of different templates that do lots of different things. In this example, it is just about the miles to the moon. So students only can answer in a numeric form. So not only myself as an English teacher who had kids answer in numbers all the time, but as a math teacher or science teacher, this is a really great way to just have the response that you're looking for. And in this case, it would just be a number response. It's not a text, it's not a drawing, it's just a numerical number, and it's not a multiple choice. You can also have students diagram what they're looking at. And so I'm looking at bees, but I can change that image to anything I want. And I can move around those boxes and I can have them diagram the different pieces of things of an atom if I wanted to. I can look at that and diagram the parts of a sentence. It's really up to me as the educator, how do I take and use this so that it best fits the content that I'm using in my classroom. And with math, I love the fact that I can also graph. Peardeck will also send students straight to Desmos. So if you are a math teacher and you use Desmos, it can send them straight to it to graph on Desmos as well. And those features are pre-built into it. But I can either, as a teacher, start this graph for students and then ask them another corresponding question, or I can just put out a couple questions in a row so that students can work at their own pace. And speaking of pace, I always put in SEL templates throughout my lesson. And so in this case, this is a social emotional learning template, which is, how are you feeling right now? I know I talk very quickly, and I know I have 45 minutes to get all of this done, but I want to know, like, how are you feeling right now in the middle of class? So are you really good? Are you stop, you need help? And that way I can totally direct my attention to where students are in that moment, and better help them.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you said this already, but are you able to import previously made lectures into Peardeck
Yes.
and then just edit it from there?
Yep, Peardeck
Okay.
is Google Slides. So any
Great.
slideshow or PowerPoint presentation, it works with Microsoft as well. Any presentation you have pre-made, all you're doing is clicking a couple buttons to add in some Peardeck slides that are either pre-made, or take the content that you have in your lesson and make questions from that content. So you have the option of both of those things. Yeah, and I think there was one more question.
Yeah, can I clarify, when you're waiting for responses, you're seeing real time as the students are
Real time.
And then like if you wanted to, like you said, star like 3 examples, do the stars automatically post to share, or you have a separate button and then you want to share if you star something?
So if I, like right now, if I star Susan's on the right, I just go to show responses, which is my toggle over here. Oops, back. And then Susan's is the only one that pops up.
Great, thank you.
If I want to lock Susan's down because she is the example that I'm seeing, I can lock it in there. The other thing that I can do as I toggle over is, oh, sorry, I don't think I explained this. So this is just another template, and there are tons of them, but this is a really easy way for me to annotate. And I love to, even in the little classrooms, I love to give assignments or different ways to have students annotate what's already on the screen. So if I was in the high school classroom, maybe this is a paragraph and I want them to highlight the claim. Or if it's in an elementary classroom, it might look very similar to this: circle the nouns in yellow and the verbs in the verbs in red. And so this can be used in multiple ways depending on what the content is that I'm looking for in this case. I can also have them draw and match. In this template, it's for Spanish. There are a ton of different templates that are in multiple languages from Peardeck. And so if I have a lot of Spanish speakers, or if I am teaching Spanish, I can draw the lines to match whatever I want. Or if I'm an English teacher, I can change all of that content on this pre-made slide and make it my own. So maybe I have definitions in the middle and the words on the outside, and I'm using it as vocabulary.
Hey, Erin.
And what?
I'm a music teacher. Do you know if there's any
Sure.
like music template things in here?
I do not. I mean, I think that there are lots of templates that can be modified for music, as far as like if I drew out some notes on a scale. I think that there are ways to use Peardeck so that templates could be made, but they don't have a specific category yet for any type of music.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. In this slide, I wanted to highlight the fact that these are 2 different icons that you've not seen. So I had to drag a blue dot, which is the given icon, or drag the red line. In this case, I have a flag and a boat, and Peardeck has a ton of different icons that you can specify that you want in your slideshow. So maybe I don't always want the blue dot, maybe I want a taco. Because that's fun for kids, and so they can drag their taco across the page. Or maybe it's very strategic, like in this case, they're boat and flag. And so I'm able to showcase different icons as I go through. And one of my favorite things to do is cross the line. I give a claim out, a statement, and I ask kids to move to one side of the room or the other, whether they agree or disagree. And I've seen this done in almost every subject matter. And when we're not in the classroom, how do I do that? And so a quick way to do it is just to drag and drop. Do you agree or disagree? And I possibly could have the statement that's on the slide, or I'm verbalizing that statement to students. But it's a really quick way to gauge. And then I could have that time to have students, well, why do you agree or disagree? And so it gives us a conversation and a deeper meaning to the discussion. And I can send students to a website. So right now, it would send you straight to peardeck.com, but it will send you to any website. And I love the website feature for extension activities or early finishers. We always have the kids that we say, okay, you have 5 minutes to do the next 3 slides. And so I can put it on student pace mode, which I'm gonna do right now. By clicking these little 3 dots, I can turn on student pace mode. And it's always going to prompt me, okay, you're in lecture mode. Do you really want to be in student pace mode? So I say, of course I do. So right now, if you go back to joinpd.com, you can move between any of the slides. And so you can see the next slide, you can see 10 slides down from there. And what I see on my end is numbers now next to every slide. So if I'm going to give them 5 minutes to do the next 3 slides, I can see when my class is ready to move forward, because I can see that all of my students are now on slide 5. And so, or slide 3, or however many slides I wanted them to do. When I send them to a website, I can have them go to newzella.com and read an article that enhances their learning. I always think of early finishers as I don't want them to do more, I want them to dig deeper. And so whether kids get to the article or not isn't the point of the matter. It's if kids have time, let's dig deeper into the subject matter so that I'm better educating you about what we're talking about. And you can bring back that to the discussion when we all come back as a group. And so I'm going to stop our student pace mode by just clicking that little button. And now you're all back in the same category so that I can get back to what we're looking at. And that is the end of the lesson. So reflection and metacognition is one of the biggest ways that I see kids really make leaps and bounds in their education. And it's just by giving a quick summative, what did you learn today? Or what did you gravitate to? Which is a really great way for kids to kind of think about what's going on. So I might ask my students in 1 minute, write the most important thing from today's lesson. And you will be surprised that you will get a myriad of answers, because it is not always just the one and done answer. They don't always gravitate to the same thing. I can also ask students, I changed this slide just very slightly. In 1 minute, how will you be an upstander today? That's what we were talking about in class. And so I ended the class by giving them a charge to be an upstander. The responses were like a variety. I had one kid that asked, that said, I'm gonna walk a little, or I'm gonna open the door for a little old lady. And I was like, good luck with that. Try finding one. And I had another kid write that he was going to stick up for his cousin because his mom always yells at his cousin, and his cousin just moved in with them. So immediately I had a conversation with this student, because I know that their home life has now just been altered. And whether there's another family living with them, I wanted to have a little more conversation. So these end of the exit tickets really helped me bridge some conversations that I might have not been privy to before that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the information that students put in here accessible to them afterwards, or is it really just?
Yeah.
Okay. How does that work?
Yes, in short. So when I end the lesson, and I'll do that with you guys in just a second, when I end the lesson, I can publish student takeaways. And the takeaways will go straight to their Google Classroom if you have Google Classroom or Canvas or whatever you might have set up. And so I can publish those takeaways every single day, or I can choose when I publish them. So if I'm reviewing for a test, I might send all their responses back to them. Or if they're writing a thesis statement for me, I might want to send that to the students so that they get all their responses. I probably wouldn't do it on a daily basis because it will bog down their Google Classroom or whatever LMS that they're using. So I would be generous of when I do it and not probably on a daily basis. But as my end, I can always open up a session that might have been closed before, or leave a session open for a week for those that might still need the content there that had been absent or just couldn't be on that day. Great question.
Okay, how do you send it to them?
I will show you that in just a second when I end the whole session, and it's just a little button. And so I'll get to that slide in just a second. For the end of my lesson, I can ask them to circle how they're feeling. And then there's just such a huge wealth of templates. These are some thinking critically templates, again, diving a little bit deeper into the session by drawing conclusions, by considering different viewpoints. And then I had my students consider these 2 different viewpoints. And this is a good demonstration of what students will gravitate to. This kid wrote out exactly the 2 different viewpoints. It was correct, but so was this image that I got from a student. And so I knew whether they were drawing or whether they were typing, that we came to some consensus of what I was looking for in the difference between these 2. I can also ask for interpretation questions. And again, just here, what is the best quotation? Sometimes quote choice is really hard for students to get at the higher levels. And so I'm just asking them what's best for the prompt. I knew 4 out of the 6 had the correct answer. So I can meet with those 2 students that might have not had it, or I can have one of the students that got the right answer explain a little bit more in class discussion of why they chose that. There's also a ton of ways to have your voice, which is up here on the audio included. And so my voice would now be coming through to your computer if I included audio, which is one of their brand new features. So I can leave instructions to the next few slides and put it on student pace mode so that my voice is coming through and I'm not wasting a lot of my own time repeating over and over again, as we always do, because the kid didn't listen to the instructions the first time. So having that voice recording for instructions or how to move forward is a game changer, in my opinion, in the classroom, and it's easily embedded into any of the slides. There are a ton of templates. You can get templates on a weekly basis if you sign up for it. And it's all about building community, celebrating students, having tough conversations with students. There are so many, and the rest of the slideshow is all of the templates, and I'm not going to go through them because we don't have time today, but the rest of the slideshow has just a huge wealth of what Peardeck has to offer, including a ton of different templates on different courses. And so we have the math, the world languages, the social studies, the science, the ELA. They're working on EL templates for our English language learners currently in Peardeck. And so we're going to get lots more of these pre-made templates that are specific for the content that we are teaching. And you can see there's just a ton of templates that are in there, and I'm not going to go through them all because, again, I want to be mindful of your time. Peardeck does have 2 different sides to it. So in Peardeck, you not only in the premium version get the Peardeck for Google Slides, but you also get the vocabulary side of it. And less is more in the vocabulary. They're drawing and they're defining, but students love it. And so it's a blend of both platforms so that you can really enjoy and have students engage. So we all have content and vocabulary that we teach. And I've included a Peardeck choice board. So once you get really savvy with Peardeck, if you choose to, there's another Peardeck choice board that's linked into this slide that will give you more features of how to go about doing new things. And I love feedback. So there is a feedback form, and I would appreciate anybody who does that. It just gives me a little sense of who you are and what you gravitated to, just like I would with my students. I want to be able to have that feedback and to have you give me some critical time to think about what you are doing. And you don't need to do it right now. You can do it at lunch or tomorrow. But I do appreciate anybody who can fill out that Google form for me. So I'm going to ask and pause for questions, and then I'll show you how I shut it down.
Erin,
could you, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Okay. I have a question about, I need access to student writing to assess goals for, I'm a resource specialist. Is there a way to get writing samples from other teachers?
Yeah, so anybody can send you that Peardeck slideshow with the student answers. It's a link that they can send to you. So if a teacher did a slideshow, they had students write on the, in the slide, and it doesn't have a limit to how much students can write. So it could be a paragraph, could be a page in Peardeck, and they could send you that session link, and then you would have access to those students writing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Erin, could you possibly share how students would get the responses from this?
Yeah, I'm going to shut it down right now. Allison, did you have a question?
I do after.
Okay. So right now, and again, if you are looking into the rest of the slideshow, it gives you step-by-step instructions on how to get into Peardeck. And today you all get 3 free months of Peardeck, and it's linked in at the very bottom of the slideshow. So I have access to give you all free Peardeck for 3 months for the premium version. And then hopefully you can have the premium version forever, because it is great. And if you don't, you can always make sure that you ask your principals to purchase it. Okay, so the big question was, how do I give students that information back? And this is the slide. So when I end the session, just like I can right here, if I hit the end button, this is going to pop up. And I'm going to name it. I like to name it by date. That's how my brain works best, is what date did I give this lesson and what period was this lesson in? And then I just click on this button, which is student takeaways. And that will send all of, once I enable that in Peardeck, it'll send all of the data to my students' Google Classroom or Canvas or however I've set it up. So it's a really great way to get that Google document back to the students so that it has their list of all the questions and the list of all their responses. And I think that is 10:20. So
Quickie, you said depending on how you set it up, when you hit publish student takeaways, is that going to prompt you to set it up a certain way?
So when you are in Peardeck, in the Peardeck settings, you can choose to have takeaways and toggle it on or off.
Peardeck
And
settings.
so,
Okay.
yeah, so in the Peardeck settings, you just toggle on takeaways, and we'll ask you, do you want to connect it to Google Classroom, which is the very top thing. And if I have, yes, I want to enable it to Google Classroom, it'll ask you for permission. And then if I enable takeaways, it will send all of those takeaways on a Google Doc to the students.
And it will individualize what student it goes to?
It individualizes, yeah, it individualizes because they log in with their email addresses just as you did. So they will automatically, Peardeck takes the information and sends it straight to Google Classroom or Canvas or whatever kind of LMS you're using.
Okay.
Do you know where it pops onto Classroom?
It pops right into their stream, I believe.
Okay.
I haven't done it in a while, but from memory, I think it goes right into the stream at the top, and then you have to kind of categorize where that's going to go.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you can also create, like when you had them do the work ahead thing where they're working on their own pace, can you create an entire lecture like that? Because sometimes I'll have to do lectures on their own. So, and then I can go back and look at the responses and feedback after.
Yep, and you can give feedback and then have them come back to that feedback.
Cool.
And then if you sent that takeaway, the feedback would be in there.
Thank you.
Erin,
Yeah,
quick,
thank you all.
quick
Yeah.
basic question. How do this slideshow is amazing. How do I make sure I have it in future when this presentation ends?
Oh, let me go back up to the very, very beginning. Hopefully it doesn't freak out on me. And then if you just click my slideshow, it'll make your copy.
And I'll be able to, okay, so when I was interacting as a participant, I can just make a copy right now with that and I'll set
You
it
could
up.
make a copy of that too, yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for this. This
Yeah.
was great.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I love it, and I'm happy to share the pair. So